A 23-year-old woman vanishes from a cruise ship in the middle of the Caribbean. No body, no trace, no explanation. For 27 years, her family has insisted she was kidnapped and trafficked. The FBI has offered a $25,000 reward. Netflix just released a 3-part documentary that has captivated millions. But what if everything you think you know about Amy Bradley's disappearance is wrong? What if the very people searching for her know exactly what happened that night? March 23, 1998. The Royal Caribbean cruise ship Rhapsody of the Seas is sailing through international waters toward Curaçao. Amy Lynn Bradley, a recent college graduate from Virginia, is celebrating with her parents Ron and Iva and her younger brother Brad. She's a strong swimmer, a former lifeguard, terrified of heights and open water. She's also recently come out as gay to her conservative family, a revelation that didn't go over well, especially with her father, who reportedly wrote a 3-page letter to one of her girlfriends expressing his displeasure. That night, Amy and Brad hit the ship's nightclub. Security footage shows Amy dancing with Alistair Douglas, a bass player in the ship's band nicknamed Yellow. The siblings stay out late drinking and dancing. Around 3:35 a.m., Brad returns to the family cabin. 5 minutes later, at 3:40 a.m., the ship's keycard system records another entry. The family says this was Amy coming back to the room. But here's where the story gets murky. According to Ron Bradley, he saw Amy on the balcony around 5:30 a.m. He describes seeing her legs from the hips down. That's a strangely specific detail for a father who claims he was half asleep. By 6 a.m., she was gone. Ron says he searched the ship for over an hour before waking the family at 7 a.m. That's a lot of time alone. A lot of time to think. A lot of time to plan. The ship was about to dock in Curaçao. Within hours, 2,000 passengers would disembark. Amy Bradley would never be seen again. Or would she? For decades, the Bradley family has maintained that Amy was kidnapped, likely by Yellow Douglas, and sold into sex trafficking. They've appeared on countless TV shows, documentaries, and news programs. They've set up websites, tip lines, and reward funds. They've become the face of cruise ship safety advocacy. But recent analysis of the case timeline and family dynamics has revealed inconsistencies that are impossible to ignore. The story the Bradleys tell has changed over the years. In early interviews, Ron mentioned seeing Amy come into the room with a cigarette, the glowing end visible in the darkness. This detail mysteriously vanished from later accounts, including the Netflix documentary. The timeline itself is inconsistent. Ron claims he went to check on his children at 2:45 a.m., seeing Brad dancing with young women and Amy talking with Yellow. But the nightclub closed at 2:30 a.m. How could he have seen this? If true, this detail becomes even more suspicious when you consider what Eva Bradley allegedly slept through that night. In a tiny cruise cabin with her husband, son, and daughter, she somehow didn't wake up when Brad returned at 3:35 a.m. She didn't hear Amy enter 5 minutes later. She didn't notice Ron getting up at 5:30 a.m. to check on Amy, or again at 6 a.m. when he discovered she was missing. She didn't hear him getting dressed, leaving the cabin, and conducting an hour-long search of a massive cruise ship. She slept through everything in a space smaller than most hotel rooms. The key card entries at 3:35 and 3:40 a.m. only show who entered the room, not who left. This creates a crucial gap in the timeline. If Amy never actually made it back to that cabin alive, Brad could have used her key card at 3:40 a.m. to create a false last sighting. The system wouldn't record that Amy herself wasn't the one using it. But the most damning evidence against the Bradley family's credibility emerged during their 1999 lawsuit against Royal Caribbean. The family sued for negligence, defamation, and emotional distress. However, the case was dismissed when Miami-Dade Circuit Judge Stuart Simons found that the Bradleys had perpetrated a fraud on the court by giving false answers during depositions under oath. The judge stated they had made numerous exaggerated claims with no basis in law. Here's what really happened. In court, the Bradleys claimed they had only 3 eyewitnesses who saw Amy after her disappearance, and that all 3 said she was under duress. That wasn't true. There had been over 100 reported sightings suggesting Amy left the cruise of her own volition. The family had deliberately withheld evidence that contradicted their trafficking narrative, evidence that suggested Amy may have left the ship willingly. The lies didn't stop there. The Bradleys also fell victim to an elaborate scam that reveals their desperation and possibly their guilt. Frank Jones, a self-proclaimed former Navy SEAL, contacted the family claiming he could rescue Amy from Curaçao using a team of military operatives. Over several months, Jones defrauded the Bradleys out of $24,000 of their personal savings and more than $180,000 from non-profit organizations set up to help find Amy. He was eventually convicted of fraud. The Netflix documentary conveniently omitted this massive scam entirely. If you're starting to think like I am, you need to understand that this isn't just about money or attention. This is about a family trapped in their own web of lies, unable to escape a narrative they created to protect themselves. Amy Bradley came from what psychologists call an enmeshed family, where individual boundaries are blurred and family loyalty is expected at all costs, even when it's harmful. Amy was 23, recently graduated from college, and asserting her independence. She had come out as gay, something her conservative father struggled to accept. She was sharing a cramped cabin with her entire family, with no privacy and constant supervision. She was emotionally pulling away from the family's shared values and expectations. In an enmeshed family system, this kind of independence is often seen as betrayal. Think about why someone reacts the way they do before you dismiss this theory. Why would Yellow Douglas approach Brad the next day and say, "Hey man, I'm sorry to hear about your sister," when no shipwide announcement had been made and only the captain and family knew she was missing? Either Douglas was involved in her disappearance, or he knew something the family had told him privately. During an episode of Unsolved Mysteries, Amy's brother Brad claimed Yellow had come up to him on the pool deck shortly after Amy disappeared and made this comment, even though at the time, apparently only the captain and the Bradley family knew about her disappearance and no announcement had been made yet. But here's what makes this case truly chilling. Recent analysis suggests the most likely scenario isn't that Amy was trafficked by strangers. It's that something happened in that cabin between family members and everything that followed has been an elaborate cover-up. The timeline gives too much detail in some places and not enough in others. This happens when a story is rehearsed rather than remembered. When people remember traumatic events, core facts stay consistent even if small details shift. But when people construct a narrative to manage perception, they adjust details over time to fit the version that works best. We have no actual proof Amy was trafficked. No CCTV footage shows her being taken. The supposed sightings years later are all unconfirmed. The photos on the escort website that the family insists show Amy have never been definitively verified, despite FBI analysis. What we do have is a locked-down room, inconsistent stories, a family dynamic built on control and enmeshment, and a perfect time window for a staged disappearance. The fact that Amy was declared legally dead in 2010 but her family continues to appear on documentaries and collect donations raises additional questions. Producers of the recent Netflix documentary have revealed they are receiving new tips since the series aired and still believe she is alive 27 years later. But is this hope genuine, or is it performance? Here's what you're probably thinking right now. You're thinking this is too elaborate, too cruel, too unthinkable for a family to maintain for 27 years. But consider this. They've built their entire identity around being Amy's grieving family. They've received sympathy, media attention, and financial support for nearly 3 decades. They've become celebrities in the true crime community. Walking back their story now would mean admitting to perjury, fraud, and potentially much worse. This is what investigators call the point of no return. When someone commits a crime and then lies about it, each subsequent lie becomes necessary to protect the previous ones. The web grows larger and more complex until the truth becomes impossible to tell without destroying everything they've built. If you're still watching this, still questioning everything you thought you knew about this case, I need you to do something. Go to your favorite true crime forum. Look up the Amy Bradley case. Read the comments from people who've studied this for years. Notice how many of them are starting to ask the same questions I'm asking. Notice how the family's most vocal defenders often sound like they're trying to convince themselves as much as anyone else. What happened to Amy Bradley? I believe she died in that cabin on March 24, 1998. I believe her family knows exactly what happened, and I believe everything since then has been the most elaborate missing person hoax in modern history. The real tragedy isn't just Amy's death. It's that her family has spent 27 years lying about it, profiting from it, and preventing any real investigation into what actually occurred that night. The FBI reward still stands. They're offering up to $25,000 for information leading to Amy's recovery and the conviction of those responsible for her disappearance. But maybe they're looking in the wrong direction. Maybe the people responsible aren't traffickers in some Caribbean brothel. Maybe they're the very people who've been pointing fingers elsewhere for 27 years. Amy Lynn Bradley was 23 years old when she vanished. She was someone's daughter, someone's sister, someone's friend. She deserved better than whatever happened to her that night. And she deserves better than the lies that have been told about her death ever since. The truth about Amy Bradley isn't hiding in some tropical paradise. It's been hiding in plain sight, protected by a family's carefully constructed wall of deception. If you found this analysis as disturbing as I did while researching it, share this video. The Bradley family has controlled this narrative for too long. The directors of the recent Netflix documentary said many people don't realize the significance of what they witnessed until later, connecting it to Bradley's story through media coverage. Maybe it's time for people to start connecting different dots. Maybe it's time to ask why a family would lie in court, fall for obvious scams, and change their story repeatedly if they truly had nothing to hide. The Amy Bradley case isn't a mystery. It's a masterclass in how far people will go to protect a secret that could destroy them. The question isn't whether Amy Bradley is still alive somewhere in the Caribbean. The question is whether her family will ever face justice for what they did to her, and what they've done to everyone who believed their lies. 27 years is long enough. Amy Bradley deserves the truth, and so do we.